call the Committee of the Whole meeting for March 4th. Please rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Oh, I'm sorry, there is a pass that I just received this. Reverend Dr. Lisa Martin. I'm sorry. Over here by the mic. Thank you.
Let us pray. Holy One, most of all, we give you thanks for this day, for this opportunity to come together. Help us, O God, to listen with open ears and open hearts, to see in each other the good that you see in each of us, and to respond not with our own will, but with an eye to your desires for our community. Bless this gathering and bless each person gathered here, so that we might leave this place stronger than when we came in. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have one add-on. Well, actually, it's two appointments for HARB, which will be made Monday evening. But at your desk, there should be resumes for Amber Buchanan, and it looks like she would fill the realtor's position as far as on HARB. And that would be an appointment that would be replacement, correct?
Yes.
Filling a vacancy.
Yes.
Whereas the other one for Mr. Sharon is just, he's expressing a desire to up for reappointment. So there'll be no action on that if anyone wants to speak on that from the audience, but that'll be listed for Monday evening. Okay, subcommittee reports. Infrastructure, Councilor Culp.
We have a copy here at everybody's.
Yep. Anything you'd like to highlight?
No, I think everything, I think it was pretty normal meeting.
Any questions from council? Okay, economic development and business liaison. Erica, anything?
Just I'll be doing a joint report with Sheila Dugan for Padita on Monday.
Okay.
Thank you.
And one other note, the farm store is not leaving Pottstown at the North End Shopping Center, so that is staying.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're going to be in addition to the store over in Pottstown. So I was in talking to one of the people in there, so there are some changes and corrections have been made. So they're staying there. Okay, transportation, Councilor Culp.
We have a meeting on March 18th.
Ricketts Community Center, Councilor Kirkland, anything?
Nothing submitted.
Okay. Pottstown School Board, Mr. Williams out there? Okay, I do not see him. Councilor Miller, if you want to do both your reports, ad hoc zoning and animal.
We'll do animal first. Special thanks to Sergeant Rathke for setting up a very productive meeting with the Humane Society of Berks County. We're hoping to get a partnership with them here in the borough. We should be ready to present changes to the animal ordinances to council in April. I had a very disturbing conversation this afternoon with a concerned citizen that the borough should be doing more to protect animals from abuse and neglect. And I asked her, and I ask all of you, if you see something, if you see an animal being abused, please report it. Not with generalizations, not in sound off. Report it to somebody that can do something about it. Zoning, I'm going to turn over to our solicitor.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Miller. The committee that has been reviewing the zoning ordinance has met regularly and has provided to you an outline of some suggested ordinance changes, kind of relating to what the committee had recommended going back on the parking issues with respect to residential parking requirements. The outline is in general form, but I think there's a lot of specifics in the outline, so council can review it and hopefully, based on the committee recommendation, take a vote Monday night to start the process of advertising and schedule public hearings on the changes. There's really three sets of changes. The first, if you will look at the outline, you'll find that the committee believes that some of the definitions set forth in the zoning ordinance should either be better clarified or actually new terms added to provide definitions. If you note, you'll find what's in bold is considered a new definition, and you can see existing definitions that have been revised. We're primarily talking about types of uses. You might want to consider them semi-residential, but they're also commercial in nature with respect to adult daycare, bed and breakfast, continuing care home, those types of items that have been added that either were not in the ordinance presently or the committee felt should be better defined. So that's the first set of changes, and those would all amend section 1400, which is the definitional section of the borough zoning ordinance. The next portion of the outline basically then would attempt to address parking requirements for a number of uses. Those uses specifically are also attached as an exhibit to the outline. The parking spaces and the uses we're identifying are adult daycare, boarding house, child care facility, continuing care home, group home, personal care home, and treatment center. And again, if you look at the attachment to the outline, the intent is to try to be more specific with respect to the parking requirements for these uses that are probably not considered truly residential, but some type of mix. So we went through and tried to add not only the parking requirement based upon square footage, but also a parking requirement based upon staff that would typically be utilized in these types of facilities. So we're kind of looking for a better determination of what is appropriate parking. Presently under the ordinance, and since the ordinance has been in effect for, 10 to 12 years, for non-residential uses, it's simply been basically 3 spaces per 1,000 square feet. And the intent is to try to be a little more compartmentalized with respect to the uses and take into effect employees or staff that might be part of this, so you have sufficient parking for those additional folks. The last part of the outline essentially is, since you've created some new definitions for terminology and uses, you want to make sure you provide for the uses somewhere in the ordinance. And we're talking about some of the continuing care home or treatment centers in a flex office district. We're talking about rooming houses, some other uses in a highway business, flex office, or gateway, trying to take what you might think to be residential but probably are more commercial and try to put them in other zoning districts rather than traditional town neighborhood where you seem to have trouble with parking and parking availability. So that was kind of the direction the committee was going on these changes. And certainly Brian, Cheryl, Dan, you were all part of the committee meetings. If I missed anything, please feel free to add on to what I've indicated. But it was my perception that the committee would like to keep this moving so that we can continue the process of coming to you with changes and continue to do it as the committee feels these changes are significant and will be beneficial to the borough and improve the zoning ordinance.
Questions? So Monday evening, we will just be voting on moving ahead with the zoning change on this.
Yes. Right. And typically, the process is going to be about a 60-day process. So by the next meeting, you'll actually see the text draft of the ordinance, and the following meeting, then you'll have the public hearing. So we're probably at the May meeting for the public hearing and adoption. So there's still another meeting for you to examine specifically what's being placed in. But candidly, the information that's on the outline and specifically the definitions probably pretty good as far as what they're going to be. we can certainly work on the text changes that need to be done. But that's what the committee's been doing the past few months.
So if anyone has any questions about this, that I know it's a lot of information that you may not have gotten through all yet, but feel free to reach out to Cheryl or Chuck with your questions. Okay, bicentennial.
Our bicentennial's coming along quite well. Mike Lenhart has put in a lot of time doing this. He's able to get together a lot of different, we're having a lot of musical groups there. We're going to be involved with the Sojourn and all the events that go on during the summer. We're going to have ethnic food vendors or people there from town, from different churches or different committees to come out and have food for their
Events.
yes, their events. So it's coming along quite well, and probably next week I'll be able to bring flyers along and be able to have flyers for anybody that might want them for most of the events, but not everything's in.
Some of the other things we're looking at, which is, I forgot to bring it up in finance, is the suggestion was made about the borough flags and the American flags and the Pennsylvania flags. Some of them are poor at best, and looking to see either through fundraising or something, somehow, to replace the flags, at least for that September 13th date. They'll be utilized naturally throughout. And there was also, Nathaniel had asked guests of the train if any of them could be put along permanent flags, or when they're put up along King Street, from the carousel up to where the Pottsgrove Manor is going to be. So we're looking at that extension too. I know Doug was helpful in giving the inventory on that and so forth. He had that very readily, but they're in bad shape, a lot of them, aren't they, Doug? So that's something we're going to be looking at. Okay, at this time, I'm going to ask for Karen McNear to come forward up to the mic for proclamation. I'm doing this in standing in for the mayor, who cannot make it this evening. This is a proclamation for the 2015 MS Awareness Week. Whereas multiple sclerosis, MS, is a neurological disease of the central nervous system, affecting 2.3 million people worldwide. And whereas the National Multiple Sclerosis Society Pennsylvania chapters report that in our state, more than 23,000 people are diagnosed with MS, and the disease generally strikes people in the prime of their life between ages 20 and 50, and causes unpredictable effects in which the progression, severity, and specific symptoms cannot be foreseen, and the cause and cure for this often debilitating disease remain unknown. And whereas the National MS Society Pennsylvania chapters have been committed for more than 68 years to a world free of MS, heightening public knowledge about and insight into the disease. And whereas since 1946, the National MS Society has been a driving force of MS research, relentless pursuing prevention, treatment, and a cure, and has invested more than $868 million in groundbreaking research. And whereas funds raised through the National MS Society fuels the efforts of nearly 380 research projects globally, totaling $50.6 million annually at the best medical centers, universities, and other institutions throughout the United States and abroad. Because of the MS research has never been more hopeful than it is today. And whereas discovering the cause, finding a cure, and preventing future generations from being diagnosed with MS is an important task that all Americans in Pennsylvania should support, and Pottstonians. And whereas the state of Pennsylvania recognizes the importance of finding the cause and cure of MS, a chronic and often devastating disease, and express its appreciation and admiration for the dedication that the National Multiple Sclerosis Society Pennsylvania chapters have shown towards a future free of MS. Now, and this is in place of Sharon Valentine Thomas, by virtue of the authority vested in her by the Constitution and the laws of the great state of Pennsylvania, do hereby proclaim March 2nd through 8th, 2015, a MS Awareness Week, and do commend this observance to all our citizens. I encourage all Pennsylvanians to learn more about MS and what they can do to support individuals with MS and their families. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the MS Society, I would like to thank the mayor and the borough for taking this time. I'm a member of the Government Committee Relations for the Greater Delaware Valley MS Society. What we do during this time is try to raise awareness through this week with education-based of how many citizens living in our state do have MS, the effects of it, and the importance of fundraising and the research. So by coming into communities, both at a local and a state level, it really does bring more awareness. You're seeing more on TV about it, people are understanding it more. And in our community here, there are a lot of people that do have it. So thank everybody, thank the mayor, and that is on behalf of the society. Thank you.
And like cancer, all families are affected. I have 2 family members with MS, and it's one is a young niece that I have, and it's just a tragic disease. Okay, the next is a presentation by the Fire Consolidation Committee, Kevin Yerger and Dave Woglum. Kevin, if you could introduce
Absolutely.
members.
To my right, we have Mr. John Muir of the Kozloff Stout law firm out of Wyomissing, who has been brought on board to work with us through this process and guide us in getting everything that we need in place to create our new entity. To my left, we have Mr. Tom Braber, who is the fire chief out at North End, and Mr. Brian Sarasinski, who is the chief at Empire. My name's Kevin Yerger. I'm the chief of the Goodwill Fire Station, and I have been the chairman of the merger committee for approximately 4 years now. Currently, there are 4 individual fire companies in Pottstown Borough. These 4 companies occupy 3 physical locations and make up the Pottstown Fire Department. These locations are North End at 301 Prospect Street, the Phillies at 240 Chestnut Street, and Goodwill and Empire housed together at 714 High Street. Each company is staffed by 1 career firefighter 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's the responsibility of each of these firefighters to respond and operate with the fire truck that is assigned to a particular incident. Between all 4 stations, there are a total of 12 full-time staff and approximately 12 more part-time staff to fill in for vacations, sick time, educational time, and other such instances. The rest of the firefighting force is made up of volunteers as well as career staff or part-time staff on their days off. Each station has its own board of directors, a president, a vice president, a secretary, a treasurer, and its own set of firefighting officers. This means that because there are 4 different companies, all of these positions are repeated 4 times. Each company follows its own bylaws and manages their own station in their own way. Each station completes its own fire report documenting an incident, and each company completes its own budget process. Each station has numerous volunteer members who respond to calls. When the bells ring for a fire, each and every volunteer from each station is allowed to and encouraged to respond whether the fire truck from their station is due on that particular assignment or not. We as career staff, part-time staff, and volunteers respond as your Pottstown Fire Department to handle whatever incident we have been requested to handle. About 5 years ago now, we began to look at the process of merging, consolidating, or reorganizing at the company level. This means that each of the 4 companies were looking at the process without interrupting the operations of the Pottstown Fire Department. We began looking at this process because it had been suggested by the borough. Our immediate thought was that we wanted to do this process on our terms so that we did not have to face the day when the borough told us how it was going to be done. A lot of things have happened in the last 5 years. Committees have been set up, members have been altered, there were good meetings and bad. Deadlines have been set and come and gone. At this point, I don't know if dwelling on the past is beneficial. What I will say is that we are in this process because it was first suggested by the borough and over the years has become mandated by the borough. There are several pros as well as several cons to completing a merger of fire companies. The cons are that there are always some who will resist change and may not go along with the process. It is possible you may lose them as volunteers. Some will suggest that the history and tradition associated with the individual fire companies will be threatened or lost upon building one large organization. Some are concerned that they could lose their positions or ranking in the fire company as less officers would be needed. Some will suggest that it is too much work or too costly of a process. On the flip side, a merger allows you to create one large and more powerful organization from multiple smaller ones. Less officers being needed frees up people to fill other spots that may not be able to be filled currently due to a lack of manpower. Establishing one administrative function, even if operating at multiple physical locations, will present a cost saving simply by not duplicating purchases, insurances, or by purchasing in bulk versus a lower quantity. Changing from operating with multiple plans of action to one streamlined plan presents a better method of providing services for everyone. In keeping with the spirit of moving forward, today there are 3 of the 4 companies who are actively pursuing the reorganization of those 3 companies into one consolidated force. These companies have collectively chosen the name of the organization to be the Pottstown Fire and Rescue Department. This name will only be used for our official documents pertaining to our company. We want to be known on the street and to our surrounding communities as the Pottstown Fire Department and continue to respond into our community as your Pottstown Fire Department. We will operate out of 2 physical locations, with one being in the North End Station at 301 Prospect Street. The second will be in the Goodwill Station at 714 High Street. These 2 locations will house the fire trucks, the staff, the volunteers, and they will respond to whatever incident they are requested. There will be one board of directors with one set of administrative officers as well as one set of line officers following one set of bylaws and operational guidelines. Both the administrative and firefighting officers have been chosen. The committee has written bylaws, and they are in the process of being reviewed and altered by our attorney to ensure their complete legality. Operationally speaking, all firefighting operations will be in accordance with and under the guidance of Fire Chief Richard Langle, as it is today. Since the beginning of the year, there has been significant advances made in the establishment of the Pottstown Fire and Rescue Department. This has been in no small part due to the hiring of attorney John Muir of the Kozloff Stout Law Firm in Wyomissing. John was instrumental in completing the New Hanover Township merger, the Eastern Berks Fire Department merger, and the Boyertown Fire and Rescue Company merger. Our only issue with bringing Mr. Muir on is that there were many legal tasks that need to be completed prior to establishing and creating a new nonprofit organization that we were not aware of. 2 of the 3 companies need to make changes to their existing bylaws to be allowed to transfer their funds to a new entity. There are inventory lists that need to be completed, resolutions to be completed, signed, and notarized, and information obtained about current debt and loans retrieved. Each company's officers and representatives, as well as Mr. Muir, have been working on these as diligently as possible. Despite even our best efforts, it does not seem that the deadline of March 31st will be able to be met. We respectfully request consideration be given to our efforts and the deadline be reconsidered with the understanding that we will continue to make adequate headway towards a new company. I would like to take a few minutes to discuss the position of the Philadelphia Steam Fire Engine Company Number 1 as it pertains to our reorganization. When the merger was first discussed with the Phillies, the new entity had every intention of including the social quarters or the bar. Our initial bylaws made provisions for social members who would not have any say over the operational side of the company. When the Phillies discovered that the social quarters would in some way fall under the umbrella of the new company, and they would have to report to a board of directors, the bar was immediately taken off the table, and we were informed that they would split it out and it would become a separate entity. This was actually pleasing news for the new company, as we didn't really want a bar associated with the fire company anyway. We were going to allow it simply so that they would be a part of the new company. The Phillies took it off the table for us, and those sections of the bylaws were cut. A few meetings later, while discussing the two-station plan that involved them moving to North End, there was an argument and they left the meeting stating they were not moving. The three remaining companies proceeded for a while, and then Mr. Woglam was brought on board to assist us. The Phillies were brought back on board and discussions continued. Negotiations were rocky, but under the guidance of Mr. Woglam, we pressed on. Phillies began to bring their own attorney, and he was often their spokesperson, asking repetitive questions that were answered every time, but not to the liking of the Phillies. At the last meeting that the Phillies were present for, the Phillies presented 3 deal breakers. The first was that they would not turn over any money that was not part of the borough's contribution. Second, they would not leave their station. Third, the ambulance was not to be part of the new entity. The other 3 companies had agreed to go all in with their assets, their vehicles, and their debt, and were in agreement with a 2-station plan. Since the Phillies were not willing to do the same thing that the other 3 were, they stated that they were out, got up, and left the meeting. When the representatives of the Phillies informed the committee of their decision to not go along with the merger, it was done on their terms. No one from either of the 3 stations made them leave, told them to get out, or told them that they would be closed. The Phillies made an informed and conscious decision to leave the process for their own reasons. They left the meeting. Goodwill, North End, and Empire continued on without them. Meetings between the 3 companies have been much smoother and much more productive since they left. We anticipated a media blitz, as they have done. It was our opinion that we would take the high road, if you will, and not reply to their attacks or accusations. It was also anticipated that this too would pass. With that being said, their campaign to save themselves has been extreme and is indirectly attacking the other 3 fire companies. Their comments are often inaccurate and only portray their side of the story. They are challenging the integrity of not only the fire department, but the merger committee and the borough. I would like to say that at no time have we told the Phillies that they could no longer fight fire in the borough. They were never told that they could not continue to perform fire prevention education, provide lunches to schools, or take Santa around the community. We wanted them to be a part of this effort, but we are prepared to do it without them. The Phillies Fire Company has some valuable career firefighters and volunteer firefighters. The merger committee has decided to offer jobs to the 3 staff of the Phillies and allow them to maintain their current benefit packages and seniority. We are hopeful that the volunteers of the Phillies decide to come on board with the new organization. We understand that this may not be immediate, but we will be allowing Phillies volunteers to come on board with any application fees waived until December 31st, 2015. The issue with us taking the high road on this topic is that only one side of the story is being heard. We want the community to know that they are currently protected day and night by the Pottstown Fire Department, and that will continue with or without the services of the Phillies Fire Company. If the Phillies volunteers decide not to come along and be part of the new organization, it will be rough on the new organization. I would argue that they do not provide 50% of the volunteers for the borough, but they do provide some. They have times when they get several volunteers out, and they have times when they get no volunteers out. This is similar in any of the other 3 stations. There are a lot of factors that must be taken into account as to whether there was a large volunteer response, a light volunteer response, or no volunteer response. The volunteers in Pottstown respond to the calls that they can when they are available to respond. I am proud to say that for the most part, the disagreements between the companies have not spilled out onto the street, and everyone remains professional on scenes and provides quality service to our residents. In closing, I would like to say thank you to all of the members of the merger committee and the staff and the volunteers of all 4 fire companies. The members of the merger committee have sacrificed a lot of time to try to build a better Pottstown Fire Department. The staff and volunteers of the department have endured a significant process that has placed strain on not only the volunteers themselves, but the intercompany relations that each volunteer counts on for their safety. And I have also included my contact information at the bottom. I believe Ginny handed everyone a copy. If anyone has any questions, I can be contacted, and I would like to open it up for any questions that you might have.
I have a couple.
Go ahead.
How many active volunteers do each of the 3 companies have without the Phillies?
Speaking for Goodwill, we have about 12. Tom and Brian can answer for their companies.
Excluding our career staff, we have 15 active volunteers.
Empire has about 12 also.
Can you explain what an ISO rating is and how it relates to response times?
I get most of my information pertaining to the ISO from Chief Langle. Chief Langle handles that. I know that he is well versed in that, and his decisions are based on an ISO rating. And he wants to maintain the 12 career staff so that we can maintain that ISO rating. There are many things that are looked into when the ISO is reviewed. I have not personally been part of that process as of yet in my career. The last ISO study was done, I believe, Chief Langle said about 15 years ago. So that was before I had come on board. There are many things that are looked at. Hose testing, ladder testing, pump testing, certifications of the firefighters, certifications of the people that go out and do fire prevention, adequate training files, things of that nature.
Councilor Miller, I'll make sure that our borough manager gets that question to Chief Langle, and he gets that to you.
Okay. And then how quickly does a fire spread?
Anybody that tries to give you a definite answer to that question would be fooling themselves, because it depends on what is burning, to be perfectly honest with you. It depends on what's burning and how much free air it has to burn. A small fire that's contained to one room is not going to spread very quickly if it's confined. If it has free air and is able to vent out a window, we'll say, it's going to spread very quickly. Absolutely, it'll spread quickly. And like I said, it will also depend on what product is burning. A lot of the newer furniture that we're seeing and we're buying is not of high quality material, and it burns extremely fast. Extremely fast. Studies have put sofas going up in under 2 minutes. And that's from the point of starting to smolder to the whole sofa being involved and rolling over at the ceiling level. It all depends on several different variables.
The active volunteers that you gave me for Goodwill, did that include the 3 paid drivers, or that was just the volunteers, the 12?
No, that would include, that's everybody. That would include the drivers, yes.
Okay. And then I have, on February 15th, there was a fire a couple of doors down from, a fire call a couple doors down from Mr. Taroni's house. Do you know how many volunteers from each company appeared at that particular call?
I apologize. I don't know where Mr. Taroni lives. I don't know which call you're referencing.
Okay, it was actually cross street. It was on Logan Street, 841 Logan Street.
I can't answer that question without seeing the reports. And as it stands right now, as I mentioned, each company does their own reporting system. I don't see North End's report, I don't see Empire's report, as I don't see the Phillies report. And unless I was actually physically there at that call or spoke to someone there, I couldn't give you that answer as to how many people were at that call completely.
As a consolidated company, would you see those reports for everybody that responded?
Yes. Yes, because we would go to one report for the whole borough. Actually, there's 5 reports that are done because each company does one. We come back to the station after a call and we complete a single page. Each station completes a single page document that lists everything that was on the call. The people, the equipment used, the trucks that responded, which is typically pretty easy because there's usually only one truck from each station. But then Chief Langle also does a National Fire Incident Reporting System report that goes to, that's a national reporting system. So there's actually currently 5 fire reports that are done. And that would be for a typical structural response. That's where all 4 trucks from all 4 stations are going. There's 5 reports that would be completed on that.
And then it would go down to 2, one from the consolidated company and then one from Chief Langle.
We would have to discuss that with Chief Langle. I would hope that would certainly go down. It should go down to 1. I would hope that it would go down to 1. And we would work closer together to get that down to 1 report so that there's not multiple reports floating around and everybody possibly has a different version of what happened at a call.
Now, Goodwill is strictly rescue, correct?
We provide both fire and rescue services. We house the rescue truck in our station, and we do respond to any rescue calls, yes. We're not strictly rescue. That's kind of what we specialize in. That's what we really like to do.
I don't need to ask you about the back-to-back fire calls on the 22nd because, like the 15th, you wouldn't be able to answer that, I'm sure. How many volunteers responded from each company?
No.
Do you agree that the response times will change with 2 fire companies?
There could be some changes. Yes, there could be some. I don't see that as a significant point because, as we stated when we met, there's a couple different factors that play into that. As it stands currently, to get to the west end of town, Bright Hope Community was one spot that was discussed heavily. For instance, to get to that area of the town, the Phillies are 3 to 4 blocks off of High Street. They have to come out of their building, come down Chestnut Street, come down Charlotte Street to High Street. Or they go against traffic on Chestnut Street to Hanover and come out to Hanover Street that way. I can't answer which way they go. It could depend on which particular driver is driving that day. That puts them at High and Charlotte. If they come out of the building the correct way, go with traffic, and come down to High and Charlotte. 3 blocks back from High and Charlotte puts you at High and Franklin or the High and Washington area. 2 more blocks down the street is going to be the Goodwill station. You're able to move a lot easier on High Street. It's a much wider street. Responding lights and siren. We've had a couple calls here of late where the Goodwill or the Empire truck coming out of the High Street station has made it there ahead of the Phillies truck. That doesn't happen on a regular basis, but it does happen from time to time, depending on what's going on or where the trucks are at. There have been those times. There may be changes, yes, absolutely.
So you can't guarantee that the ISO ratings won't change, which would affect residential and commercial insurances?
I can't guarantee that they wouldn't,
Okay.
but under Chief Langle's guidance, he is doing everything in his power to keep that. And as long as we keep responding with the same apparatus that we are responding with today, that's what they're looking for. They want that apparatus to be responding on calls. There are other ways to get around that. If we come into a instance where distance is an issue, simply by adding a mutual aid fire company to the alarm assignment, that takes care of that as well. That I have had that conversation with Chief Langle, and Chief Langle and the chief of West Pottsgrove have been in discussion to possibly do a dual response to the Glasgow Street corridor. That street is divided on the yellow line. Oftentimes, somebody looks out their window and sees a fire in the house across the street. That actually puts it into a different municipality. So somebody could be calling from the Pottstown side, look out their window, and they're actually talking about a West Pottsgrove West Pottsgrove resident. So there have been discussions about doing a dual response there, just as we do for the airport. That's a dual response right now.
Okay, thank you.
Would the Phillies absolutely have to relocate? Is that something set in stone in merger talks? Could the consolidation continue with them staying in their firehouse right now?
We have not discussed that. When they stepped away from the table, we continued on. That would be a question that I would have to take back to the merger committee. There's 12 members on the merger committee, as well as Mr. Muir and Mr. Woglam with their guidance. Discuss that with them and see how they would advise us to proceed.
I have a couple questions here. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your efforts to, what you've done so far.
Yes, sir.
I've heard reports that there has been times, I just want you to verify this for me.
Mm-hmm.
There has been times where during a fire event, and because of the Phillies' vast disparity of volunteers as opposed to, the other ones, that there's been instances where only Philadelphia or Philly fire volunteers have responded to fires, and the other three only had drivers at the fire site. Is that true?
There are times when the other stations do not have volunteers on scene.
Has it ever happened and vice versa? And the other firefighters ever had all their volunteers, no Phillies show up, or
Yes,
just drivers?
we've had those calls as
the
well.
other way.
We've had those calls as well.
Mm-hmm.
Every volunteer fire station has manpower issues. That's not just local to Pottstown. That's every municipality. Lower Pottsgrove sees it. West Pottsgrove sees it. New Hanover sees it. Douglas Township, Limerick, everywhere. Manpower, when you're discussing volunteers, is very difficult to predict. And in all honesty, some days are good, some days are bad. Some days we get lots of volunteers out. Some days we don't get any. Some days we get volunteers to come out, but they show up 15 to 20 minutes into a call when we really wanted them there in the first 5 minutes. We needed them there relatively quickly. There's many a time during daytime responses where on simple fires, Chief Langle is the only firefighter at a scene. There's no volunteers that respond, and Chief Langle is on a hand line. That's some of the stuff that we're trying to correct. We want to combine everybody into one effort,
Right.
so that we can hopefully avoid that. And the only way to correct that issue at this point is to get through this process that is actually stifling the volunteers from coming into the area. Nobody wants to come into Pottstown and begin volunteering with all of this going on. We want to move through it relatively quickly, get to the end of it, and continue moving forward.
Right. Throughout this whole process, my main concern has always been coverage. Forgetting all the rhetoric, everything that's been happening back and forth. To me, coverage is the main issue, is the only issue. Okay? Are you confident that if this merger goes through without the Phillies, that coverage will be there for all the residents of this borough?
Yes.
You confident in that?
Yes, there's no staffing that is going to change. Borough Council has never one time threatened the career staff. It's always been that they were going to maintain the career staff to respond with those apparatus.
Volunteers also, speaking of volunteers also, not just,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Volunteers, as I said, the level of volunteerism right now is poor in all of the stations. There are times when Goodwill doesn't have any volunteers there. There are times when Empire doesn't have any volunteers there. There's times when the Phillies don't have any there. It's all through the companies.
Okay,
Everybody has their fair share.
I want the other two to answer that question too.
I'm sorry?
Do you also feel that coverage going forward without the Phillies will be there for all the residents of this borough, and you're confident that it would be just as good after the consolidation as it was before, as far as volunteers showing up and every house in this borough being covered? Are you confident in saying that?
I believe the level of coverage will change. Somebody will show up. When you call 911, there will be a fire truck there. But the level of coverage is going to change. On day one of the new organization, you're not going to have as many people as what you have now.
That doesn't seem too sure. You don't seem too confident in that answer to me.
Confident in what answer?
The answer that you're confident that there will be sufficient coverage as far as volunteers coming to a fire event without the Phillies being involved.
Like I said, the level of coverage will change on day one of the new organization. There won't be as many people responding, which therefore you're taking a gamble.
Okay, can you answer that question, please?
I would hope so. We all know, like we stated, sometimes we have volunteers that come out, sometimes you don't. You can't sit there and guarantee a volunteer's going to come out at all. That's part of the reason we have the career staff here.
Since the last time the Phillies left negotiations, has there been any last-ditch effort from either the Phillies or the committee to try to get them back in one last final time? Any kind of effort from either side?
No.
None whatsoever?
No.
That's all I have.
Mr. Kirkland, if I may, as we discussed when we met at the Phillies the other evening, we talked about that specific question with the volunteers, and we talked that the new entity has no intention of shutting out any of the volunteers from the Phillies. And my question would be, if those volunteers are willing to come over to the new entity, we would welcome them. Are those volunteers here to serve the Phillies Fire Company, or are they here to serve the community?
Right. That was my statement the last month. That was my statement.
Yes, as we discussed. And that's a hard question that those volunteers would need to ask themselves. You know, are they here for the Phillies, or are they here for the community?
Right.
If they're here for the community, then I would think that they would want to come over to the entity that's going to be providing the fire coverage. If they're here for the Phillies, then so be it. That's their decision. And I can't answer that question for those people. But they will have a home if they choose.
Okay.
Councilor Gary?
I don't have any questions. I just want to thank you guys for, first and foremost, the work you do as firefighters, and also for the level of seriousness that you've dedicated to this effort, and for the above and beyond the firefighting aspect of it, just the amount of time that you've taken out of your lives to sit down and hash this out. And I think that says a lot about your dedication and what you guys are here for, and it seems pretty clear to me that's serving the people of the borough, and I thank you for that.
Councilor Wien?
Yes, I too would like to thank all firefighters, whether you're paid, part-time, full-time, volunteer. It's a wonderful thing you do, and we're blessed to have you. My only question is, as this merger gels and becomes concrete, is there any discussion that you can do better in recruiting volunteers combined than you have been individually?
It is possible, as I stated, that with combining the officers into one structure, that those processes aren't duplicated and would free up some people. It would be great if we had an officer that was in charge of recruitment and retention. That would be fabulous. And had somebody that was dedicated to just that. At this time, at Goodwill, we don't have a person like that. I don't know if any of the other stations do. Within the department, I can't really think of anybody that just wants to dedicate their time to that. I would assume that would probably be an older person that might not be involved in interior firefighting or actively firefighting, but still wants to be a part, knows what it's like to come up through the ranks of a volunteer or combination fire department, so that they can coach those young individuals through their membership. That would definitely be something that we would want to work with, yes.
If it could be arranged, would you be interested in cooperating or participating with our high school to put some type of firefighting curriculum in that could help with at least the classroom training?
As far, like, on a long term, or just going into the school and presenting?
Long term. If we could make that part of their high school curriculum, if they want to get into that career. We have carpentry, we have machine shops, we have. What about an area for firefighting? That could be instituted. Would you be cooperative with that?
We would be cooperative with it, the best that we could. My issue would probably be having somebody that would be available to dedicate that much time to that particular process and still have a job and a...
You're receptive to the idea.
Right. Absolutely. We're receptive to it.
Yeah, just a comment for that question as far as into the high school. The school I retired from has a protective service program down there, and it is packed. So I don't know why this might be an offering at our vocational school for protective service,
So
which
we can
has.
pick up the overflow?
Well, they're loaded down there. I mean, with the amount of students, he's at capacity plus. So, but it's a popular program, and it's a split between police and fire. So that's something that maybe a borough manager can have discussions with the superintendent as a possible, since they do have the vocational step. This question's for your solicitor. How much more time do you think you're going to need?
I've actively been trying to guide them for maybe the last 5 or 6 weeks. And since I became involved, we've had meetings literally every other week. As Kevin was sharing, there's some certain steps on just even setting up the transfer of assets, which included two out of the 3 legacy companies, so I say, amending their bylaws to make that step happen. With the continued cooperation of the 3 companies, I think it'd be realistic to be in a position to file a petition in Orphans Court in 60 days, far and maybe 90 days. Items that I've asked for, I have been provided. Inventory. Does this truck have a debt on it? Do I need to talk to the state of Pennsylvania on the 2% loans? Do I need to talk to North End has a line of credit. I need to talk to that bank in order to facilitate that process. Preparing the petitions, again, recently doing Royersford down here in Montgomery County, as well as New Hanover and Sassmansville. Once the petition's presented to the court, and you receive the approval from the Attorney General's office on the transfer of the assets, the process can go fairly quickly. But we're getting there. They've worked very hard in the past 5 or 6 weeks. If I ask them for information, I'm getting emails on Sunday night. And it's a lot of information that I've asked them for, and we are trying to move as quickly but carefully as we can. But that's my, again, assuming continued cooperation and things are going fairly smoothly, that's my best estimate.
So a comfortable date and timeline would be like July 1st, June 31st, July 1st?
July 1st is probably, that's fine.
Could we have them report back, in the meantime, a monthly report of progress?
Yeah, we can have that. If we could have an update either through a report with you coming to a meeting or just even in written form like this would be fine.
Okay. I've been communicating with Mr. Woglen quite a bit. Certainly, I think we can, we talk about timeline, quite honestly, every time I get together with these folks as to, okay, what steps do we need to do now? And I think we can work together and provide you folks a monthly update or some idea as to, okay, here's where we are.
So Monday evening, we'll have it listed as far as extending it to June 31st, or June 30th.
3 months, 90 days.
At this point in time, up now until July or June 31st, where the date is the door open or shut as far as the Phillies being able to come back and join into the negotiations? I know it's late in the process, but is the door open or shut at this point?
I don't have that answer without talking to the rest of the committee. They would absolutely have to provide everything that the other companies have done, because that's what's legally needed from Mr. Muir's standpoint to complete this process. So unless they're willing to provide everything that's required by Mr. Muir, there's not a lot that we have to offer them.
I don't think Mr. Kirkland's asking for conditions. He just wants to know, are you receptive if they're willing to join?
We'd have to talk to the rest of the committee at this point.
That was my second question, was to ask, and I did have conversation after our last meeting with Mr. Pierce and asked him if he would reconsider and join back in with the talks again. So that's been offered to their company.
Okay. Is that also your response, Mr. Muir? I know you only been in for only 5 weeks.
Well, my response is I work for the combined fire
Right.
company. If that's 3 companies, great. If that's 4 companies, great. If that's 2 companies, not great, but that's who I work for. Again, I've been through this a number of times in a number of different counties, and sometimes there is resistance from one fire company or another fire company. We encountered it in Spring Township when I did that in Berks County. Coonroo Township, Western Berks, Eastern Berks. I mean, there are bumps in the road. You are consolidating 4 legacy companies who've served their community for some of them over 100 years. There certainly are some bumps that can happen. But to answer your question, sir, if it's 4 companies, I'll work with whoever wants me to work with.
Then I suggest by that date, the Phillies make that call.
Mr. Muir, I have a question. Is that accurate that it's legally required for the Phillies Fire Company to give up their building, their assets, in order to join this consolidated company?
Now, it's not legally required for anybody to give up their assets, okay? But if the team, if this new entity is going to consolidate their assets together, okay? Whether it's their fire apparatus, whether it's their turnout gear, whether it's their hose, whether it's their structure, meaning their home. Again, if they decide, and if that's what the task force decides that they want to do, then we can make it work that way. There are some fire companies, Western Berks, we have 2 social quarters. 2 of the social quarters still exist. The Western Berks Fire Department are tenants in those 2 social quarters. The 2 other structures were completely, all those assets were transferred to the Western Berks Fire Department. So you can make it work without necessarily the transfer of the real estate. But I think certain fire companies feel if you're going to be invested, you need to be invested. You can't taste the water, you have to drink the water. And I think, again, my experience over the past 18 years helping fire companies is if they want to be involved and they want, I mean, the purpose behind consolidating, 1 is duplication of services, 2, duplication of equipment, and 3, manpower. I mean, the one thing that I think all you folks realize is volunteer fire service is dying. It really is. Statewide, the number of volunteers, my generation, are not volunteering. And the younger generation really aren't volunteering. And the days of the municipality having hybrid departments is great, or combined departments, because it's much more efficient than a totally paid department. So a long answer to your question is it's not legally required. There's no requirement that A company donate their building or B company or C company. Again, I think it goes back to what this consolidated team or this consolidated department wants to do. It certainly is helpful to me if I know, okay, we have 1 truck, 2 trucks, 3 trucks. Truck number 1 has a loan through National Penn Bank. Truck number 2, because if I'm transferring those titles or if I'm insuring those vehicles under Pottstown Fire Rescue Department as opposed to Company A, I mean, that makes sense, and I need that information. So there are some things that I need from any company, and that's what I've asked these folks for.
I have one last question. Mr. Muir, right?
Okay. Yes.
In your experience, in the past experience that you've been doing this, have you ever required less from one fire company as opposed to more from other companies, simply because of their either perceived position of strength, as far as coming into a negotiation or coming to a consolidation?
Less meaning financially less?
Required less of them to enter into this an agreement. Like he was saying, he wants them to, as long as they give what everyone else is willing to give, then they're willing to come back. But in your past experience, have you ever required less from a fire company that's coming from a position of strength, as you required from other fire companies? I'm not sure if I'm.
Yeah, I'm not sure I fully understand your question, sir. Spring Township, 4 fire companies, 2 municipalities. It was the borough of West Lawn and then Spring Township. West Lawn subsequently merged into Spring Township. 4 separate fire companies. Some of them were flush with cash. Some of them could barely pay the bills. The ones that were flush with cash were saying, well, why should I give my $300,000 to this new entity if Company B is giving me $5,000 worth of debt? We've worked very hard. We've been frugal. We have $300,000. You have debt. And what we did in that situation is we created what was called a restricted fund and said, okay, put all money in the pot. There was a little bit of, they were very hesitant. Spring Township was pushing the consolidation, and some of the fire companies were concerned. They placed those monies in a restricted fund, and only the fire guys could decide how that money was used. Municipalities couldn't decide how it was used. The fire guys had a task force, and they decided how that was used. That somehow kind of balanced it out a little bit, at least on the fire side, and made some of the fire guys a little bit more comfortable that they're donating their $300,000 worth of Kaufman barbecue chicken sales, and no one else is going to touch it. And that balanced out, although that did create some tension because you have one company who was good on saving the money, and another company spent a lot of the money, and a little bit of leap of faith. And that was, they still have some struggles, but that was 14, 15 years ago that Sprint's been consolidated. So.
Do you
Any
feel
other
that,
questions?
I'm sorry, do you feel that could possibly be done, something similar could be done in this situation? Possible?
If you have four
people willing to work it
If
out?
the Phillies are at the table and they're asking questions, again, if that's what the team wants to do, I can do my very best to guide 4 people in the event, 3 people in the event, whatever it happens to be.
Any other questions? Anything from you, Mr. Waldman? Well, I would like to thank you guys for the report you gave us. The one thing I was very happy to hear, and I knew that it would occur anyway, that professionalism is occurring at the fires and is continuing to occur from all 4 companies. So I'm glad that this didn't enter to that mixture. So we're grateful of that. So we thank you guys and continue.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, continuing on with our agenda. Next is Emergency Management Plan 2015. I guess
there's a requirement every 2 years, I believe, for the borough to adopt a resolution in regard to our emergency management plan, which will soon be coming under review again, but nonetheless, there is the requirement that the resolution be put into place. I believe that was included in your packets.
Any questions? Number 7, here we are once again, the Pottstown area closed loop extension request. I thought we had kicked that can down the road to a point I recycled it. But,
Not
I guess
quite,
it's
apparently.
back again, I have to pull it out. So.
Doug, I believe supposedly this is going out to bid in the not-too-distant future, correct?
That's what they're saying now, so.
I'm not sure what the not-too-distant future is.
So then we'll be listing that for an extension.
For an extension.
To September.
September 30th. There we go.
Okay, number 8, residential rental units ordinance amendment. I guess this is Keith.
Mr. Garner and Mr. Place.
Yep.
If council recalls, I guess it was a few months ago, Mr. Place and the Department of Licensing and Inspection made a proposal to consider changes to the rental ordinance that would result in an annual inspection of rental units. It would do away with the requirements for inspection at change of occupancy, essentially would require the inspection to occur on an annual basis. There were a number of landlords that were at the meeting and for a number of reasons didn't like that idea. But more importantly, I think council was a little bit concerned whether or not the annual inspection was something that could be handled on a regular basis. And so my recollection was council tasked us to go back and look at this and perhaps come up with another way to address this issue. So there would be more frequent inspections, try to help safety issues, but at the same time, perhaps not infringe so much on the annual inspection theory. So as a result of that discussion, Mr. Place and I have been working and reviewing revisions to that ordinance. We haven't really changed the concept so much, except we've changed the timing. And the timing would be a biannual inspection, meaning an inspection once every 24 months. So in essence, all of the rental units would be inspected once every 24 months as opposed to once every 12 months. And I guess there was also some concern potentially about the staffing that might be needed. There was some concern about units that are presently unlicensed. So we talked about it, and again, we're only in March at the present time. But in order to try to better transition the new approach into the department and to better make people aware of the new rules if you choose to adopt them, would be to allow the first period to be an extended period, not 24 months, but 30 months. So essentially what you'd be doing is, if you would pass the ordinance, it would start effective July 1st, and the first period of inspection would be for 30 months, which would take you to the end of December 2017. Thereafter, it would transition and continue on a 24-month inspection period. That would give an extra 6 months on the first cycle, so there would be the ability to make sure there was adequate staffing. I'm sure there's going to be issues with scheduling and registration and things that really should have been going on from the landlords previously, but the extra 6 months certainly gives everyone a little cushion to make sure the new process can work effectively. The plan would be, again, when it transitions into the 24-month cycle, there would not be an inspection at the change of tenancy, so it would continue basically one inspection every 24 months. I believe we decided that during that initial 30-month window, change in tenancy could still occur if you wanted it to do that. Other than that, I think the ordinance is pretty much like it was. We tried to incorporate your concerns. We tried to listen to some of the landlords that were present. They felt that perhaps infringing on their tenants on a yearly basis might be a little too extreme. But right now, under the present ordinance, if you're not getting the change in tenancy, you're getting an inspection once every 5 years. So this obviously heightens the frequency of inspection, but still at a reasonable time, at least Mr. Place's opinion based upon the feedback you've heard. And I've talked a lot about it, Keith, and I'll turn it over to you, and you can fill in the blanks or answer any questions.
Pretty much, if there's any questions, I can answer them at this point in time.
Is there a payment to be made for each of these inspections?
Yes, just as we talked about the last time, Mr. Kirkland, I believe the ordinance takes and better defines the number of units. So, again, a typical rental, which might be a single or a duplex, and again, whatever we talked about before still is in effect. The fees will be determined, but I don't know if there's any fee changes from what we talked about last time. I think for the larger units, single family and twins, or I guess up to 3 units per building, was the $80 fee, which would be paid, again, once every 24 months. For more of the dense apartments, the fee would be reduced when there's more units in a building, so it wouldn't be quite as costly, since we envision the time for those inspections would be somewhat less as far as manpower and time incurred. So we still have that same breakdown, Mr. Kirkland, of what was in the prior draft. Again, the fee's not paid every year, it's only paid once every 24 months when the inspection occurs.
One of the things that was talked about is getting appointments, with tenants and so forth living in the apartment. If for some reason an apartment in a big complex became vacant and the landlord asked for an inspection, would that count as his 2-year cycle inspection?
We can work it that way without question.
Because that seemed to be one of their concerns, that if they had an empty apartment, it's easier to inspect than a full one, so they could schedule. How long a turnaround would that take to do something like that? Because, it's not like they may have somebody right away knocking on the door to rent that unit, because until they go in and clean and paint and do whatever they have to.
Based on the manpower that we have in place as of today, you're talking probably 2 weeks.
But you're looking at increasing manpower, though, correct?
We actually have accomplished that right now.
Oh, you are? At
Maximum
capacity?
would probably be 2 weeks.
Okay.
How many inspectors do you have now that are doing rental units?
Right now, we have 3 full-time inspectors. 1 inspector does helps out with the zoning plus with rentals, so 3.5.
That's your full capacity?
At this point in time, yes.
you feel this ordinance as proposed is workable and doable by your department?
Fully confident in it, yes.
Very good.
One of the other things too, at the last, well, when we had the presentation, there was an inordinate amount of unlicensed rental units. Have we gotten any farther in securing licensing for these units?
Yes. We've targeted several properties. We've actually found even some today.
Okay, so it's an ongoing process.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Because to me, in order for this program to work, we have to get them all licensed.
Yes, sir.
Anything else? Okay, so what, only evening we will be voting on moving forward with
Right,
it?
this is the draft that has come back. It's certainly not been advertised. You're talking about it this evening, so if you're inclined to move ahead, the motion Monday night would be to advertise the ordinance, and then that would place the ordinance on the agenda for your meeting in April. So I would anticipate, and certainly we'll put the ordinance on the website so anyone can take a look at it. And I would envision we'd get some public comment, maybe even Monday night, this coming Monday or certainly next month.
Okay, it'll be listed. Number 9, Kime Street Bridge pedestrian use.
We've received a letter from the Montgomery County Commissioner's Office, their Assets and Infrastructure Public Property Division. As council's aware, the county is working on a plan to construct a new bridge that joins Chester and Montgomery counties at Kime Street, and they haven't fully decided whether or not it's going to be a realignment or a modification of or a repair of the existing bridge. They have sent us a letter stating that if they decide to realign and construct a new bridge, they would like to know if there was an interest on the part of the borough to take possession of the existing 8-span riveted steel pony truss bridge, which apparently has historic value, and maintain it as a pedestrian connection between Montgomery and Chester counties. They would like to know by March the 15th if there's an interest on the part of Borough Council to take possession.
Are they also selling the Brooklyn Bridge?
Sounds like a very expensive venture.
I was under the
Do we have
impression
any
that
idea
it's
what-
Chester, it belongs to us and Chester County.
Yeah, we own, or the county owns like 90%, I think, and
I don't know if they sent a letter to anyone in Chester County or not.
Because from what I understand, that they were trying to they thought with the historical value that somebody'd be interested, but from what I understand, there's several other bridges in Pennsylvania that are the same, so it's really has no value as far as selling it for
I would
historical.
suggest we have a interest in several bridges in the borough, which could create a severe financial burden on the borough. I don't know that council wants to acquire another one that we already know is going to have a financial burden.
Unless we can sell it on eBay.
My only thought with it is that I'm pretty sure they're contemplating putting the pedestrian bike lane across the new bridge that they're going to be building. So maybe if the county would decide, you know what, why don't we just eliminate that off the new bridge and just keep the old Kime Street Bridge as our pedestrian, that way you're not mixing two together.
Then they'd have to maintain the old one.
Somebody's got to maintain it, or it's got to be torn down. They can't just leave it there. They have to do something with it.
Tearing down is a one-time expense. Maintenance is forever.
Well, I agree. I'm not saying, I don't want to take ownership of it. I'm just offering this as an alternative to the county, as they may, save some money on the new bridge, and maybe might expedite the, although that may become moot if they decide to replace the bridge exactly where it's at right now, so then there is no thought, so.
Why don't we see if we can get some money from the new PennDOT secretary?
She's from Montgomery County.
Yeah.
Well, what is council?
No.
I'm seeing a lot of shaking of heads.
No.
Go figure.
Do we need to vote on that or anything, or just that, Mark, send a...
I think if you're not inclined to entertain the proposal, I think you can let the borough manager can send a letter without a vote.
Okay, number 10, farmer's market.
You received a letter from Ms. Dugan of Padita and Brian Steer. They are currently exploring the possibility of establishing a farmer's market, an outdoor farmer's market here in Pottstown on Saturdays. Specifically, they would like to utilize the Reading lot, which is south of the railroad tracks, for the purpose of that market, and they would like permission from Borough Council to move forward with their planning and give an attempt at sustainable agriculture being sold at a farmer's market here in Pottstown on Saturday mornings, or Saturdays, I should say. I'm not sure if it's the mornings or not.
I think it's a good idea. I mean, certainly...
I don't see a downside.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is ask the solicitor to make sure whatever agreement's in place, we have the proper hold harmless language in there.
Right.
What about, think it would have any kind of effect on our farmers? I mean, I don't know how busy our farmers market is that we have there.
Well, the only one that sells produce is Daniel's there on High Street. He's got a pretty big following. He's open, I think, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I mean, it's a possibility he may even want to have an extension stand over there, in that lot. Because I know he gets a lot of produce from his family's farm in Lancaster. Any other thoughts?
No. Would it cause a problem with parking?
I don't believe so.
Or any other
The
events?
area that they're interested in is towards the back removed, and we don't have a lot of parking there presently.
I think this was tried once down in the parking shop lot several years ago, and
Tried there
minimal.
and at the Heritage Area
Yeah,
Park.
but it was on Sundays.
Let's try it.
Yeah, so we have residents willing to do this. I think we run this. All right, it'll be listed for Monday evening. Number 11, the Schuylkill River Sojourn.
Sojourn again will be floating down the river through Pottstown. They will arrive on Tuesday, June the 9th, and would like permission from Borough Council to camp overnight again at Riverfront Park, and then depart Wednesday morning, June the 10th. Obviously, this will require intervention or clearance through the police chief and through the fire chief, since they want to have a campfire.
Also, the bicentennial, Councilor Coffey, do you want to just briefly discuss what we're looking at to tie in with that?
They're going to have a band there, and they're going to have entertainment, and I believe they also have food for that. And anybody, Pottstown is invited to attend and join. And
Yeah, they're looking at doing a possible battle of the bands too, between young groups and so forth. So that's being contemplated also. That's still in the works. So that'll be listed for Monday. Pottstown Rumble Beer Wine Tent for the 27th and 28th.
The Rumble again is asking for permission from Borough Council to have a beer wine tent at Memorial Park during the Rumble event. It would be for both days, the 27th and the 28th. I'm not sure if they are going through a special events license this year, or they're going to use one of the new pop-up venue licenses, but nonetheless, they will have a LCE licensing.
Any questions? Okay, Independence Day, LTD, Beer Garden Memorial Park, July 4th.
Similar request from Independence Day Limited. They are planning events for the Independence Day weekend this year, and one of the changes they would like to have is an addition of a Sly Fox Brewery sponsored beer tent at that location from 3:30 to 9:30 at Memorial Park on July the 4th with the rain date of July the 5th. Again, I'm not sure which one of the licenses it is, but it will either be a standard special events license through LCE or one of the new pop-up event licenses.
Okay, any questions? Lawn maintenance bid awards.
Doug?
Yes, we went out to bid for all the lawn maintenance. That includes our properties. water and sewer facilities, and all of our right-of-ways, traffic islands and stuff. We broke it into 4 groups mainly because the magnitude of the locations. And so we have 4 groups. Airport, we have one with right-of-ways, and then there's another one with other properties, water and properties. The numbers came in very favorable. In some cases, they were identical to last year. So the airport came in lower than last year. We would recommend that the Group 4 not be awarded. That's to use a boom mower to do certain places that are beyond guardrails and stuff like that. We actually came out with a company that rents it on an hourly basis, and we would be lower using them than what the bid number was.
Any questions?
Doug, that's the Plymouth nursery that you had highlighted. You said you found something lower than that?
Yes, we have on an hourly basis, we can rent the machine and the operator lower than that number, much lower in fact.
So would that include properties that crop up that might be vacant or somebody that we have to take care of and bill? Is that in any of this?
No, that's under the property maintenance, which is a separate maintenance contract. So that all the private property that would be mowed as part of abandonment or some other issues are under a separate contract. This is all the facilities that we have.
That bid was awarded, I believe, in November or December?
Yes, December.
The property maintenance? Yeah.
And that's a 1-year contract, so that'll go the rest of this year.
Any other questions? Okay, it'll be listed for Monday evening. ARP, administratively approved for 701, 703 East High Street.
That was to change the face lettering of the existing building sign.
Any questions? Okay, that'll be listed. That's it. We're up to comments from citizens present. I already said that. Yeah. Maybe just remember those two names.
Jacqueline Hormansky.
Please be reminded you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I want to start out by saying, first of all, that the comment was made that time doesn't matter in terms of the fires. I want to remind everybody that time does matter. Approximately every 20 seconds, a home fire is reported. House fires are the 3rd leading cause of fatal home injuries in the nation. Each year, fires kill more people in the United States than all natural disasters combined. The U.S. Fire Administration reminds us that in just 30 seconds, a small flame can turn into a full-blown fire. Time, in the case of a fire, time is of essence. When I came here tonight, I really wanted to talk about what happens with fire. When I stood here and listened to what happened at the table, I changed my mind, because I feel like the decision that's being made should belong to us as residents. It belongs with me as a taxpayer. I want to thank all of you for making the questions that you asked tonight. I want to thank each and every one of you that are firefighters, whether you're volunteers or whether you're paid, because you give you the time, you do the things that take into consideration that save everything that matters to us, whether it's our property, whether it's the things that we buy, or whether it's the things that we have. But in 5 years, they made the decision here today. In 5 years, at no point did somebody take the time to say to the residents, we want you, as the residents, to be aware that at some point we're going to mandate to this committee, this is what we're going to do. Mr. Troney, you're our president of council. Should you not at some point have come to us and said, residents, we want you to be aware of what we're doing? with your well-being, with your safety, and with your tax dollars. And now we've said to you, and to you, and to you, we're going to put this decision in your lap. We're going to make you no longer be friends with the people that you're going to stand there and fight fires with. Instead, we're going to spend thousands of dollars on decisions, on studies, on this and on that. No, that decision about my safety and my well-being should be my decision as a taxpayer. It should be my decision as an owner. It should be my decision. I elect you to make that decision. No, I elect you to represent me. You know where my door is when it's time to vote. You should know where my door is when it's time to make life-saving decisions. Thank you very much.
George Harmansky.
Good evening. My name is George Harmansky, and I'm a member of the Phillies Fire Company. I have been a member for the past 5 years. Regarding the fire company merger, I have several items that I would like to bring up. Recently, there have been some statements made by the newly tapped fire chief that make this merger seem a little out of hand. First, he states that the new company will not be ready to operate by March 31st. He also states that he doesn't see response times as being a huge issue, but if it was your house and your life on the line, would you have an issue with that, especially as a taxpayer? He also states that there's no written plan or financial analysis for this whole merger. With that being said, where are the savings going? Are there really any savings? Mr. Chironi, you have pushed and pushed and pushed this consolidation because of cost savings to the borough. Where are the cost savings, and what are they being used for? No one would know because there is no plan or financial analysis done. All of this has been based off a consolidation plan, which is called a position paper. What is that? Is this the real basis for all the consolidation? Shouldn't you have a rather large basis, not just a single position paper? The base should consist of financial analysis, cost-benefit plans, studies, most importantly, information from within the field, from firefighters, fire chiefs, and many more. Some of the council members have already stated in the past they are worried about the true safety of the general public. Is everyone up here worried about the true safety of the general public? If so, why would you want to close the largest volunteer company in the community? Are you trying to jeopardize the public's safety? Mr. Flanders, you've stated that the borough has a responsibility to pay close attention to how taxpayer money is spent and to find new and innovative ways to control rising costs. But regarding the merger, there will be no change in money spent for fire protection. So let me ask you, how is this merger controlling cost and being innovative? Is it? Does the council as a whole know every fact about this merger? When you have different council members saying different things about the same issue, the answer is no. And if no one on council has the same information, do you think the public does? Again, no. So let me ask you a question. How is this benefiting taxpayers when they're losing the company with the largest number of volunteers? The company that does most of the fire prevention for Pottstown Public Elementary Schools, for St. Aloysius. The only company in the borough that does the Santa Run for the entire Pottstown community. The only company helping out the public by doing things such as basement pump outs. Is this merger really worth losing one company that does the job of three? On a side note, I would like to say in 2009 when I joined the Phillies, it became my home. I went to the other three companies because I personally live in the North End. When I went to North End, I approached them, I said, hi, I'm a junior, I'd like to join. Again, so I have my whole life ahead of me to serve this community. I was told, we don't want you. I went to Empire, where my family has base. We were told, we don't want you. I went to Goodwill, and they turned me down. At the age of 14, do you think that sets a good image? I have my life ahead of me, and I would like to dedicate it to this borough. And I was told, no. So what makes me now want to go to a Goodwill, to an Empire, to a North End, to call it my home, when they told me in the first place that I wasn't allowed to call it my home? Thank you.
Doug Breidenbach. Doug Breidenbach.
I don't think I can top that, ladies and gentlemen. But I'm asked to say just a couple of things, if I may. Mr. Muir made a comment. He said, if you're going to get into this merger, you can't just taste the water, you have to drink it. Well, the problem that you folks are having with the Phillies is we're not drinking the Kool-Aid. Forget the water. So we're not drinking the Kool-Aid. Tonight, again, the presentation was focused on why did the Phillies not participate in the merger. Talk about the Phillies social room. Talk about their worries about their building. Again, the question is being posed incorrectly. The question is, why do we need a merger? Not why will the Phillies not participate. I'll answer that for you again. Why do we need a merger? Mr. Wagum's sitting right there. He wrote it in his position paper. Everything is currently working. Why are we changing it? We've never had an answer. There's never been a dialogue where that question's been answered. The position paper says redundancy of purchasing, improved purchasing power. Well, if you're keeping all 12 drivers, which we absolutely think you should do, you might save $80,000 a year. Cost of one policeman. You're going to tell 28 volunteers, get out of town, we don't need you for that number. That's your savings. That's it. Drink the water, drink the Kool-Aid. All the companies are being asked to do the same thing. I wasn't at this meeting, but I'm informed at the last meeting of the merger committee that North End was told they would have to contribute their real estate, but Goodwill is not contributing its real estate. I think you should ask why. We're not drinking the Kool-Aid. And you shouldn't either. You spend $1 million a year in the fire tax. Now you're having a fire and rescue company. You're taking $250,000 a year away from the most viable, vibrant company you have, who can allow you to continue in this currently working process for years to come and not face the risks that some very perceptive questions pointed out tonight. You're taking that money away from the Phillies. You're giving it to a fire and rescue company that doesn't have a piece of fire equipment and is not going to put the building into the deal that you guys are mandating. I don't get it. I heard Mr. Yerger say that his hope is that the Phillies volunteers will forget the Phillies and go over to the new company. And I was frankly offended on behalf of my friends at the Phillies that he sort of posed a question that called into question their degree of volunteerism or the quality of their volunteerism. If they're really volunteers, what do they care about the Phillies for? They should want to serve the residents of the borough. Well, Mr. Hermansky gave you a real good indication of why. There's an esprit de corps among these people. There's a spirit that is unquenchable. And I don't have to prove it to you. They show you every day. Every single day. Respectfully, I don't think it's for the borough council or administration to dictate to these volunteers who they have to volunteer with. You should be happy you have the volunteers.
Pottstown pride, man.
Some of the councilors have asked that perceptive question. What happens? Because now the Phillies are out. So what happens the first day of the new entity? Well, I know that you all have to be sitting there hoping that the Phillies volunteers show up. But if that's what is a critical part of your decision, I pray you're not wrong. I pray you're not wrong. Because you're asking people to show up after you've told them, we don't want you and we don't need you. I hope you'll really consider very carefully your vote. Thank you.
first responders for any company at any place for doing what they can do. Second of all, I have no affiliation with any fire company within the borough of Pottstown, but I am a homeowner. And I can tell you that what I heard up here tonight was rather disturbing. When I heard that response time didn't matter, as that lady said, if it's your house, it does matter. We've unfortunately had several issues on Hanover Street lately. We had a car go into a home, and I can't say because I wasn't doing a report card, but mostly what I see was fillings. We had I think it was a kitchen fire or a false alarm Sunday night at the apartments at 4th and Hanover. The fire trucks all said Pottstown Fire Department, but every volunteer, because that time I was watching, said fillings. I worry tremendously about response time. I question the responses, as the lady said. Once in a while, in the last couple of years, I've read an article, but basically I have not heard any reason why this needed to be. From working in business, a lot of these things about paperwork and savings, they can be done without mergers. You know, you can consolidate, and just like you are with the school district. You're saving money by buying supplies. All I know is what I read in the paper, and it's been very validated. I've read numerous times that come March 31st or April 1st, the Phillies will not be able to respond. Tonight I heard not, but I didn't hear why not. As a taxpayer who pays way too many taxes, I worry that the end result of this merger will be a professional fire company. And that even if it doesn't go completely professional, these paid drivers will wind up being unionized and being in the union contracts, which have we can't afford them. So I would like the borough to be able to back up and rethink this all out and make sure that it is the best for the people in the borough, and maybe, worst comes to worst, put it up to vote. Let the people speak. Thank you.
That's the extent of citizen comments.
Councilor discussion, Councilor Kirkland.
I don't have anything, thank you.
Councilor Gary?
I don't have anything.
Councilor Williams?
Well, I received probably twice as many calls in the last 3 days than I have in the entire time I've been on council. Mostly, well, concerning the Phillies Fire Department, obviously. And I appreciate the calls, and I'll take it into heavy consideration.
Councilor Miller? Councilor Miller?
I'd like to also thank all the firefighters from all the departments. I see Mark Gibson is in the audience tonight. I actually know how to put out a fire thanks to his training at my company for 4 years that I was there. So thank you very much for that, Mr. Gibson, and thank you to everyone.
Okay, that is it. We are adjourned.